what I want to do is compare the major differences between Terror Train 1980 and Terror Train 2022. Because what I didn't expect was a shot-for-shot remake with very little differences. But there was a few. So we'll go over, and they're actually pretty big ones.
Yeah.
So the synopsis for Terror Train 1980, directed by Roger Spottiswoode in his directorial debut, and he had Jamie Lee Curtis. Set aboard a moving train on New Year's Eve, the film follows a group of pre-med students holding a costume party who are targeted by a killer who steals their costumes after murdering some of the students to avoid being caught. So that's the whole gimmick. They're on a train. They're all in costumes. Every time the killer murders somebody, he steals their costume. Doesn't matter size, shape, color, gender. And it was a good gimmick. And the original Gimmick was pretty scary looking because he just kind of wore a Groucho Marx nose and glasses, but he had the train conductor hat, and then he was kind of holding a knife. Where this one...
Didn't he do magic tricks or something?
Did, yeah. So this was David Copperfield. I don't know if this was his
right.
film
David
debut.
Copperfield was in the original Terror Train. I forgot about that.
He's in the original as the magician, which plays into the topic. And we'll do that as one of the main differences in this one. 2022 version versus 1980 version. They both play the red herring. Magician is played. There is a magician. There was no assistant for the magician in the 2022 version, where the assistant in the 1980 version played heavy into the spoiler, and we'll touch into it in the end, because when you find out who the killer is, you find out that the assistant was a costume for the killer. So I thought this was interesting, because that's a pretty big plot point.
I see.
Because in this new one, you find out the killer's been on the train all along as the assistant. If you go back and watch the 1981, that assistant, she is very frightening looking, because it's bad drag. Mm. And it was very like, whoa, something feels off.
Yeah.
And that's what got you. Where they didn't go into this one, this magician in 2022, he wasn't exactly David Blaine. He was a little bit more of a Chris Angel, if Chris Angel was a soap opera. Chris Angel had a kid with John Stamos. It would be this magician. And he was David Copperfield was an angry kid, but it felt a little bit more charming. And where this guy was like, man, look at all these spoiled kids. I wish this chain would just crash and kill them all. And you're like, bro, what? So they leaned heavily into that red herring. And this is going to be a spoiler review, but if you've seen the 1980, you've seen the 2022. And that's why I told you, it's like, if you didn't want to go back and watch it, you'll probably be okay.
Here, I didn't get to use the Halloween spoiler sting, so let's put it up right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, yeah. Perfection.
Spoiled the new Terror Train,
right.
Which, let's face it, no one's going to watch.
Yeah, it didn't have a lot of action in there. And we haven't told you who the killer is, and I'll say that was one for last, because that is the biggest and most abrupt change that they made between the original and the new one.
Yeah.
The next difference was 1980. It was a costume party for New Year's. 2022, it was a Halloween party on a train.
Yeah.
They completely just changed that. And, the original concept for Terror Train was, this was coming off the heels of the original Halloween movie. It's 1980. The producer was like, let's make Halloween on a train. You know how everyone wanted to do Die Hard on a plane? Die Hard they were trying to make Halloween on a train.
Yeah, but they did Die Hard on a train too. Twice.
Yeah, they did. But this was like, well, why don't we just make this Halloween night? Why does it have to be a costume party on New Year's Eve? So
it makes sense to me if you're the did Tubi produce this movie, or did Tubi just buy it?
I think it was actually in the Brooklyn Film Festival.
So it had to be an indie movie, huh?
Yeah, it felt Yeah, it felt pretty clean. And so
Yeah.
I wish that was one of my gripes with this. I wish it felt a little grittier. But yeah, I didn't see who the actual production company was on it.
Yeah.
Like surprisingly, there's not a lot of not a lot of information about it.
Does Terror Train have a big following?
I think Terror Train falls into one of those movies that like you have to be. It's not a wide spread following. Like you're a little bit more into the horror genre because I feel like there was a lot of movies like I would put this with My Bloody Valentine, could both being Canadian slashers.
This is a Canadian slasher as well?
Yeah, this is also a night Terror Train was considered a Canadian slasher. But it was a Canadian slasher who done it with twists and turns. Yeah, so it was yeah, I was trying to find the production company who actually did it. But yeah, it actually had its debut in a film festival, but it felt like a made-for-TV movie, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, it felt like it was made for TV, and I didn't hate it. Let me just be clear, I didn't hate it, but the original one had that even though it was 1980, it just had that eerie feel where I never felt eerie here. Just, but then again, a Groucho Marx mask to me now is a little scarier than a clown because we've seen scarier clown. We have Art the Clown. We live in a world with Art the Clown.
Yeah,
so your
all
clown mask,
all of the scary clowns are done. Like
yeah,
I would like Art the Clown and the clown in It. Art would fucking kill him,
yeah.
destroy him. And I shouldn't curse on the stream, but yes.
So this clown mask to me, I was just like, they probably should have got away. They probably should have did a different mask. I would have leaned into the Groucho Marx mask.
This really sounds a lot to me like another movie that was written by an algorithm.
You might. I don't think you're that far from
because
the
it just seems it's like, okay, let's shot for shot remake the movie. Let's replace the killer mask with a clown mask, and let's change it from New Year's Eve to Halloween Eve. It just seems like they were just pulling out all the stops to make. My favorite Halloween movie does not take place on Halloween. It takes place on 4th of July. It's Return of the Living Dead. I don't think it matters what holiday. You don't have to have set it on Halloween to really drive the point home. It just has to be a scary holiday or a scary day in general. But I don't know. It doesn't sound good. I'm just going to say it. Doesn't. I don't think there's.
I think you'd have to fast forward through watching it again. If you, it's. I'm giving you the major differences because the majority of them are no different. Like a lot of the costumes, other than the clown, are exactly the same. The kills are the same. Like the kid that's in the lizard costume, he gets killed with a bash to the mirror in both movies.
Yeah.
So the slow motion, I guess, even made for TV, this feels like it was an MTV horror movie.
So it's just like the algorithm said, let's not even change anything from the original movie. Let's just do the kills the same. Let's put the same costumes on everything. That part people liked, so let's leave that the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy who went crazy in the beginning, because he was being hazed and he got pranked into kissing a cadaver, and that it traumatized him, and he lost his mind. So they did stick with that. But let's jump into the big change, because this is the big one. So in the original, you had conductors, but the conductors, like shovels, and they were all kind of like the good guys, like they were trying to help. In this one, they only had 2 conductors, and the one conductor, you can tell she was a gray-haired older. You would know her. She was in the movie Signs. She played like the sheriff in Signs. She's a great actress.
Sure.
But something felt like, wow, they booked her for a big role. She's not just going to be the conductor. And then they had like another young, unknown, beautiful woman as the other conductor. And that's it. That was it for the conductor. So something there felt off to me. And then the swerve at the end. Do you remember the reveal at the end of the original Terror Train?
I don't.
So Kenny, who was the one who was pranked, who went crazy, and he was the killer in the original, is dressed like the conductor. He sits there with Alana, who's the Jamie Lee Curtis character, and he kind of holds her hands, and he looks up, and he has like the dress to kill type mask on there, and then they get into the fight, and they did all that in this movie too, you know. But then the reveal was in the new one is Kenny was on the train and he was doing all this, and he wasn't dressed up as the magician's assistant. He was in a bunny costume the whole time, but he looked like he was kind of partying. And then the magician shoots him. The magician's still the red herring, but he still saves the day. But then something else happens, like somebody else is still killing. The Jamie Lee Curtis, the Alana character in this one, sits down with the conductor, and then the conductor sits up, and she looks up, and then you realize, oh, they are doing a Friday the 13th. Look what you've done to my boy. So the conductor was Kenny's mom. So they pulled a Friday the 13th, Scream 2, look, I'm going to make all you kids pay for making my son go crazy. And now the magician shot my son, killed my boy. So she went and killed the magician. So she took the Kenny role in there, and then they get into the big fight. And then she gets, you know, the boot off the train instead of Kenny, who got booted off the train in the original one. So that was the big swerve. Sorry if I spoiled it for you, but we did have the spoilers.
I had no intention of watching it. It's like it sounds very much like an algorithm movie. Like it's just it everything about it is as formulaic as it could possibly be.
Well, yeah, because the train stuff looked a little CG. It looked shiny. It looked very CGI. When she got kicked off the train, Kenny's mom, who was the conductor, it looked like a CGI fall, and she just fell on some rocks. And then they did the scare at the end. She opened her eyes. When Kenny got kicked off the original train in the original Terror Train, like he took a boot, it looked like a limp dead body was about to land in a body of water, and then he hits the ground instead and smashes against the ground, flips into the icy water, and then you watch this corpse floating down the icy water. And I was like, it felt a little bit more like eerie, where this felt very shiny, like she shot her eyes open and she's like, I'm back to do it. So
yeah,
I was like, look, this was like, you could have watched this on fast forward. This is, again, it was a cool vibe of like the costumes on the train. I feel like train rides are low key fun, and people forgot how cool it is to be on a train because they get bored. Now I was like, I want to go on a party train.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needs to be a terror train, but if you told me that there was going to be a costume party on a train, I'm going to go.
I mean, it worked in Trading Places.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is your Terror Train 3-second review?
The Terror Train 3-second.
What is your Terror Train remake 3-second review?
Terror Train 3-second review. Just released the original one in 3D.
Boom.